There was a tide line in the lunchroom. Viv saw it hazily. She might, she thought, have been able to see it better if the room wasn't sideways. She followed the tide line with her eyes, aware of the scent of salt and seaweed, and was mildly curious that she didn't seem to find either the scent or the tide line odd. She ought to find it odd that there was seaweed clinging to the exposed beams in the roof, and that there were still little drifts of sand welling up in corners here and there when her eyes wandered away from watermarks along the walls and ceiling. One of those little drifts was shifting slightly, grains of sand tumbling down to the floorboards, and tiny sandy ripples spreading a circle outward as the drift moved. She ought to find it odd, but she didn't. It took Viv a little while longer to remember that the world as she knew it was not the world she had known last week. The world she had known last week was a world of stress and pain, a world of anxiety about whether there would be enough money for the rent. It had been a world where her biggest worry was making sure that she didn't ask too many questions about Dad's health or pay too much attention to his complaints, or risk having to listen to Dad happily explaining how bad his migraine was and how sore his back was, as Viv herself was trying not to see too many colours in the world while her head pounded and the rope of fire that served for a muscle in her left shoulder burned and burned. But in the world she knew now, her biggest worry was now death on a daily basis. No, thought Viv, waking up a little bit more, it was worse than death. It was knowing that even death wasn't enough to stop what some people in the world could do to her, and that she could still be alive in some form to know about it and be horrified by it. Viv now lived in the human world, and the world behind that, and the world between them both. But if it had taken Viv's mind far too long to remember pertinent details, her body had certainly remembered immediately. There had been a feeling of dread in the pit of her stomach since she woke, and now Viv knew why it was there. The human world wasn't just the human world. It was the human world, but now filled with myriad tiny false surfaces that, if walked on, might well give way and send the walker plummeting down into an abyss of terror and death. How could she know who on the street was human and who was fae? How could she tell when someone might be able to use magic around her or near her or against her? How could she be expected to live in a world where such powers existed? And Viv herself had. Last night, she had. She had found Luca trying to escape, and she had stopped him. How had she stopped him?